team members and Meltano community members. My name is Douwe Maan, and I am the product lead for the Meltano project at GitLab. And in this group conversation, I am excited to answer some questions you might have about our recent progress since the last update 5 weeks ago. I put a link to the presentation in the document, so check that out, please. And then I'll start with questions in the doc. First one is from Francis. Would you like to speak to that, Francis?
Sure. Hi, Douwe. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Excellent. I'm just curious because at GitLab we build a product that's for software development, and so we use our product to build our product. But Meltano is a little different, so I'm just curious. Like, do you personally get any time to use Meltano, either for like demo projects or for side projects? And if so, what do you do with it?
That's a really great question, and I'm hesitating because I actually haven't been doing much dogfooding of Meltano myself. And in part that is because, of course, there are different use cases for it. Most users are actual data engineers at companies trying to pull data out of systems and stage it somewhere for analysis. And then there are also hobbyists who are using it to pull in data from, the likes of Goodreads and Strava, etc. But I have mostly just been listening really carefully to what our actual users are doing, because I don't really want to put in my own lack of data engineering experience angle to it and prioritize things that the community doesn't actually want prioritized. So in the beginning, very consciously, I didn't spend too much time using it myself because I know I'm not the representative user. And at this point, it's gotten to the point where there's so much stuff that I want to be doing to improve it for our actual users that I haven't really taken a day or whatever yet to build my own project to get that dogfooding experience, because I feel like the time would be spent better, and I haven't necessarily found it a limitation in not dogfooding myself. But then again, next week, I'm going to be doing a presentation at a virtual event on Friday. Everyone should join, by the way. You can sign up through the link in the presentation. So of course, I will have to prepare some slides and kind of get a demo setup going. So probably next time I'll have some more dogfooding experience, but so far it's been very consciously a community built and driven tool, with me just kind of being the coordinator and the person who can spend most time on implementing stuff, more so than me trying to inform the product direction through my own dogfooding. But of course, that's hardly an excuse for not using the tool itself. And of course, I do use it, for testing and bug fixes, etc. But I'm spending more time just kind of taking in community feedback, helping the community get started, and then having that drive where I find the weak points are and the rough edges are. Then coming across that in my own usage so far.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Douwe. And I'm already signed up for your talk next week, so very excited about that.
Awesome.
I also have the next question.
I'm going to interrupt you right there because I see that ZJ added a follow-up question.
Oh, follow-up.
Vocalize it?
Yeah, so when you started with GitLab, you were the core user, and so it was very easy to empathize with users. And now, do you feel that's much harder because you aren't the core user, like you just said, and as such, well, how is that experience?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because definitely at GitLab, one of the things I also repeated a bunch, especially when hiring people and getting them excited, is the most amazing thing about working for GitLab as a programmer or an engineer is that your job is to make your own job easier, because you're constantly using your own project, and everything that bothers you is probably worth working on and fixing, because the product will increase, improve not just for you but for the users too. With Meltano, it's been a little bit harder because I'm not actually the user, and in the past I have said a couple times that I would never work on a project that I'm not myself also using, because then you're basically just doing whatever the product manager said without understanding the problems you're solving. But I am able to emphasize a lot, of course, with the users that we have in the Slack workspace, because they are sharing all of their experiences with previous tools, and then they are sharing why Meltano is such an improvement for them. So I do feel kind of connected to their plight and the situation they're in, of wanting to have a transparent open source data stack, which is not really possible or available with many of the tools out there today. And maybe it's a little bit more difficult because I cannot just lock myself up for 6 months and know I'll be doing things that the users want. So it's all the more important that I listen to the community. But in a way, that's been great too, because it means that I have no excuse to not be constantly talking to the community. So I spent definitely at least a third of my time every day. So that's 2 to 3 hours, just basically in Slack, engaging with people and helping them out and answering their questions, which of course also shows me where the documentation might be lacking or where the tool itself might not be addressing their needs all that well. So I haven't experienced it as a problem so far, but it's definitely different than GitLab. And what I have found is that GitLab, of course, since every programmer basically has a need for this kind of DevOps platform. When I was talking with DZ, Dmitry Zaprozhet, the original founder of the GitLab open source project, for those who might not be aware, a couple months ago about how he originally got the open source community to start contributing to the project, he mentioned that the thing that made a big difference is that he just started posting about it in regular Ruby and Rails user groups and IRC channels and what have you, because every programmer could get motivated to start contributing to this tool. While with Meltano, it's definitely the case that it's mostly relevant for people who are already data engineers and who already know Python. So in that sense, it's a little bit more niche. But what we have found, and it's kind of related to the next question coming from Francis, what we have found is that the majority of contributors are contributing to Meltano in their work time. They are contributing to Meltano because they work at a data team and their boss has decided we need better open source tooling. So they get a mandate to actually spend however many hours a week contributing to the open source data tooling that they are using and want to use. While with GitLab, of course, most people contributing to GitLab are also using it, but it's not necessarily something that your boss would actually tell you to start spending a couple of hours on. And this reminded me of something that Sid brought up, I think, in the AMA last week, which is that we want to start motivating our GitLab users and customers to have their team start contributing, which of course contributes to lock-in effect and contributes to GitLab being the best possible choice for that company because it's so aligned with their needs because they have been able to kind of set the direction for it themselves. And what with Meltano, what we're finding is that it doesn't necessarily take effort to get companies to start contributing. They are coming themselves. And one example of a really awesome contributor who has been contributing the majority of merge requests we've received over the last couple of weeks is Neil Woodward of Tails.com, which is like a pet food store in the UK, because they actually had this. They were already planning to start building their own ELT, open source ELT platform built around Singer taps and targets. And they already had built their own shell around Pipeline-Wise, which is another Singer tap and target runner. But then they came across Meltano and they just decided to allocate or spend the time that they otherwise would have spent on their own tool on Meltano now. So we're really seeing this kind of core contributor group starting to shape, mostly consisting of other people who are also doing it as part of their job. So it's starting to feel like colleagues more so than just some rando who decides to spend 30 minutes in their evening to fix a bug, which of course is also amazing. But it's been nice to see that difference in the type of contributors we're attracting. And in a way, of course, the project is going to be better for it if we have people who are invested in the tool as a core part of their data stack, giving back and making sure that Meltano stays the best possible tool for the job for that team, because these will be users and contributors for life. And that's, of course, kind of speaks to the conviction that I have, and definitely Sid has, and other people have too, that Meltano is we're shooting for the stars, but it's looking increasingly more likely that with this community we're building, we're going to have a place in a lot of people's data stacks for a long time. And that, of course, is a very great promise for the business opportunity that will, rise or show itself eventually when we have reached 100K plus users running Meltano in production. Cool. Francis, next question. Or did I already? Well, I didn't quite answer it, but you can verbalize it again.
I don't know if you did or not. If there's more to say, then great. Just curious about how you encourage community contribution. What's your outreach strategy like?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is that since we are building a platform for data extraction and loading, data integration. But then we are building the tool that runs the specific extractor and loader for a specific data source and data destination. So any data engineer that wants to use Meltano kind of has to become a contributor at least of these extractors and loaders, because they might not exist yet for the data source they want to use, or they might have bugs, they might be outdated, or they just lack some functionality the user is looking for. So by converting data engineers and data teams and data consultants into users, by nature of the product, they automatically have to become contributors of the extractors and loaders as well. And then if they run into issues with Meltano, it's a really simple step to also start contributing to Meltano itself. But right now, because Meltano's viability as an ELT platform is very much kind of dependent on the quality and quantity of these connectors, these extractors and loaders, it's more important for Meltano's long-term success right now that we get a ton of people contributing to the extractors and loaders to increase the quality of these open source connectors than to Meltano itself. And Meltano currently is in a state where it works really well for running ELT pipelines, and the problems people are running into are more often to do with the specific extractor and loader they're using than with Meltano itself. And one of the reasons why the Singer ecosystem has maybe stagnated a little bit before Meltano came around is because there wasn't necessarily a viable production grade deployment story. So a lot of people came across it, tried it out, found that it was buggy, and then gave up on it. But by building Meltano, we are basically telling them like, hey, if you put in a little bit of effort to improve these connectors, and if you do that together with the community of data engineers, then because of Meltano, this can actually be something you can rely on and you can trust as part of your data stack going forward. So in terms of motivating or encouraging contributions, the most important thing is to get people using it, get them to start fixing bugs in the extractors, and then if they are like, wow, this is actually pretty cool, then they automatically become contributors of Meltano as well. And in that sense, it's really important that Meltano is written in Python rather than Ruby, which of course is our language of choice at GitLab, because all of these data engineers, if they know any programming language, is probably going to be Python. And since these taps and targets, these extractors and loaders are written in Python as well, the jump to contributing to Meltano is really small. What we're also seeing is that data consultants, especially who have more kind of software engineering approach to building these extractors and loaders, because they are software engineering teams building the stuff for their clients. So they have invested in making it reproducible and making it efficient and having like reusable components. They are perfectly comfortable with the CLI aspect of Meltano and the fact that it is just a directory in your file system with a Meltano YAML file, etc. But we are also starting to see people coming in from marketing agencies who actually want to have their less technical end users be able to use a user interface and use it to contribute and to configure their connectors and set up their pipelines. So what we are seeing is that there are definitely different groups of users who are contributing to taps and targets, extractors and loaders, different users who are contributing to the CLI and kind of the core functionality of Meltano, where we have some functionality that makes it really easy to debug and develop these taps and targets as well. And then there's a different segment that have started to contribute to the UI because they actually want to offer Meltano's interface to their end users. So, so far the strategy that seems to be working out is just to get people using it, and eventually everyone will contribute because most of the users will find that the taps and targets for the data sources and destinations they want to use do not necessarily have the level of quality yet that they need to run them in production. But then if they also have these additional needs for the UI or the CLI, and once they have decided this is going to be a part of their data stack, it has turned out to be pretty easy to get them to start contributing some bits as well. So we don't have a specific contribution strategy because most users will need to do some amount of contribution anyway.
That's great. Thank you.
Cool. ZJ wants to thank everyone typing notes. Yeah, thank you too. I know I talk a lot and I talk very fast. Really fast. So, kudos for whoever manages to keep up. All right. Any more questions? I see a cursor there, but that's yours again, ZJ. Can you come up with anything else?
Sure. So I was actually looking at Meltano last week, and I am not the core. So first, I've been out of the loop for a while, and second, I'm not the core audience. Going to the website, I know that you shifted who your core audience is, but I'm not sure who is right now. Could you verbalize that? And then I was scrolling some more, and I went to the Tab Singer website, And if you click like the tab GitLab thingy, then they say you can extract to, and then as a sync of the data, it doesn't tell me anything about Meltano. Is that just because
you're
Meltano...
muted. I cannot hear you. Oh no, wait, that's on my side. Maybe 1 sec.
Okay.
Can you talk again?
Yes, I'll keep talking. And once
I don't know what happened. Maybe I messed something up.
Okay. Can someone else point their thumb up if they can hear me? Okay, so it's not me.
Okay, I can hear you again. That's better.
Okay, yeah. All right. So
I did hear your question about the second
part,
audience.
I'll verbalize later. You can start now then with the first.
Yeah, so the target audience right now, in the documentation, there's a little focus section that also describes it, but we are specifically targeting data engineers and data consultants who have already decided they want to use open source components to set up their data integration and data transformation pipeline. Because, like I said earlier, it's really important right now for the long-term, success of Meltano that we attract people who will feel comfortable contributing to these extractors and loaders. So if you don't understand what the website is about, that's intentional, because it's definitely written in such a way that only the specific target audience who already knows all of these terms and who is going to be comfortable with all these concepts that are introduced, these are the people we want to attract. And we kind of want people who are looking for a visual ELT platform, or people who are just looking for some kind of plug and play setup. We want those people for the moment to feel like it's not for them, and for them to leave the website, because of course at this point, in terms of like support load, we can only really handle those people who we know will convert into contributors and who will kind of lift up the ecosystem through their contributions. So we're starting out by attracting people who have already found the Singer ecosystem of open source extractors and loaders, because these are the people who are most helped by a production ready strategy for deploying them and running these ELT pipelines. But then there's also the DBT community, and DBT is a data transformation tool that has been becoming super popular over the last couple of years, because it also brings some of these more DevOps software engineering best practices to a field that previously was dominated by visual tools that did not have these benefits of version control and CI/CD, etc. And what we are hearing from a lot of users, and that's definitely by design, is that Meltano and DBT seem ideologically aligned, at least in the sense that we want to bring these software engineering powers to data engineers who previously have not necessarily had those opportunities. So in terms of the community that we want to attract users from, the DBT community would be the second one. And then later on, like I mentioned, we are starting to see an interest too from like marketing agencies that want a visual UI. And at some point, when the library of extractors and loaders has reached the quality level that people will not need to debug them or fix bugs themselves, then we can kind of shift our focus to that more slightly less technical, more visually inclined audience. And then the website will also change to cater better to them. Does that answer your question?
It does, thanks.
Cool. So your second question about tab GitLab.
Yeah, but this is very much in the weeds, so I guess there's no other question, so sure, why not? So the thing is, like, if you click on the tab, and I was trying to figure this all out. So clicking around, and tab apparently extracts data and puts it in a sink. But the sink was not, like, Meltano wasn't mentioned as a sink, and that's just because it's an overarching platform. If you want to have your sink be a PG instance or SQLite or CSV or whatever, like, that doesn't matter for Meltano. It's not like, I don't know, like they failed to mention you.
I get what you're getting at, and the confusion also shows that you're not the target audience. So
I'm not, yeah.
Which is fine. So the Singer specification for writing extractors and loaders has existed for a few years now. But basically what it specifies is that if you have an executable which connects with some kind of data source or API and then outputs the extracted data in a certain JSON-based format, then you can connect it with a target, which then takes in that JSON-based format, which describes all of the records, and which will then push it to a destination, which might be a Postgres database or a Snowflake data warehouse or a CSV file or whatever. And this has existed for a while. And like I mentioned, a lot of these connectors already exist. But you need some kind of tool to orchestrate the connection of these two tools, something to manage the configuration, something to separately handle sensitive passwords and tokens from things that can be hard-coded in your project source code. You need something that manages the incremental state of your pipeline so that when you run the pipeline again, it picks up where the last run left off instead of reloading all data again and again. And currently with Singer, this is something that users are expected to handle themselves or write their own one-off scripts for. And a number of data consultants have indeed over the years written their own toolings very specifically catered to their setup and other tools they're using to orchestrate and handle the running of these steps and targets together. So Meltano comes in as exactly this platform for running ELT pipelines made up of Singer taps and targets and DBT transformations, and it handles configuration, it handles the state, and all these other aspects that you need to actually be able to deploy Singer taps and targets in production. And what we're seeing, and this is great, and Neil Woodward of Tails.com, who I was referring to earlier, is a great example of this. Data engineers who have in the past built their own tool and have now kind of come to the conclusion that they are better off pooling their resources with other data engineers and data consultants to just build the one great tool for running Singer taps and targets. And that's what we are doing. So when you just look at the Singer website, Meltano will not be mentioned anywhere there because it only describes what extractors exist for pulling data out of sources and what loaders exist, what targets exist for loading data into destinations. And then it leaves the rest of the story as an exercise to the reader. And Meltano basically is that exercise to the reader. Cool. All right, no more questions. And I feel like ZJ is having trouble coming up with more. So is that it, ZJ? Or can you come up with the last one?
I'll schedule a coffee chat.
Let's do that. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your attention today. And I hope you'll check in again in a week or 6, because I'm expecting more great updates on Meltano for a long time to come. Bye-bye.
Thanks. It's always good to see what's going on. Ciao.
Bye, Rep. Bye, everyone.